rocket design contest. Your choice. Thank you, David, and it's an honor to be following the folks who spoke before me. And let me start with a conversation about one of the most important things that you're going to be doing this summer, which follows, I think, in the lines of what Regina was saying, and that is taking risk. Right? It was Bert Rutan who I heard this from first. He said the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And so the question you have to ask all of us is where in our current organizational structures and where in our ways of thinking inside of companies, inside of governments, do we actually try crazy ideas? It's fewer and fewer. You know, Regina used to serve over DARPA, and I'm sure that even DARPA is under immense pressures. You know, when the government invests in one energy startup and it fails, and then people get literally, crucified in Congress because, oh my God, how do you have a failure? It's like, whoa, hold it. No, we should have a lot more failures. You should be trying a lot more things that fail, because that's the role. That's one of the questions is, where in your life are you taking risks? And in the ideas that you're working on this summer, I urge you to try big and bold, crazy ideas. Because ultimately they seem big and bold and crazy right now, but 5 or 10 years from now, they're going to seem like, wow, of course, that's exactly what you should be doing. But today, they're bold and they're crazy. So the question is, how are you going to do that? The other side of the equation I want to ask you to think about is you're all here as an expert, right? You've started companies, you've got doctoral degrees, multiple doctoral degrees, you've worked on all kinds of different things, and you're experts in those areas, at least at some level of expertise. And one of the challenges that I would urge you to think about is actually taking on a project outside your expertise. An adjacency, if you would. You know, I define experts a lot of times as the person who can tell you exactly how something can't be done. And it's a challenge, because when you become an expert in an area, you become, you know everything about what's been tried, what can be done, what has been done, and ultimately you are trapped in the way that you think. And you don't know how not to think the way that you currently think. And so a lot of times the true breakthrough occurs from someone who is very naive and comes in, well, why can't you try it this way? You go, that's just impossible. And of course, when that person tries, a lot of times that's where breakthroughs come from. So consider, if you would, that this summer, this 10 weeks, is an extraordinary opportunity to do something completely outside your comfort zone. And maybe bring some unique brilliance to it. And I can tell you that a lot of the SU companies that are most successful were really started by people who didn't have any expertise in that area, but who had a novel way of looking at the subject, and then actually came at it, and, lo and behold, there's something really cool there. And you have to be really careful when you come and speak to a faculty member or an esteemed alumnus who says, that's a crazy idea. We saw Arthur C. Clarke in your video, and I had the honor and pleasure of knowing Arthur well. He was the chancellor of the International Space University, with a few ISU alumni here in the audience, a university that Bob Richards and Todd Holly and I co-founded. And I remember Arthur's 3 phases of a great idea, right? And it really always rang true to me. So the first phase of a great idea, people will tell you it's a crazy idea, will never work. The next phase is, well, it might work, it's not worth doing. And the third phase is, of course, when they tell you, oh, I told you it was a great idea all along. There's a fourth phase when they tell you, oh, that was my idea. So, I stand here as someone who is absolutely certain that there is no problem on this planet we cannot solve. Given the right definition, the right, commitment of capital. And there's plenty of money on this planet. There's plenty of capital, right? There are trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars sitting idly by the way. And it's your job to liberate that capital by creating value and by ultimately returning greater capital and putting that capital to work over and over again. But the right combination of capital, people, and technology can solve anything. Period. Bar none. It may be difficult. It's never easy. It may take decades, but these can be solved. So, you know, if in fact you believe you can solve any problem, the question is what's the problem that you care about most passionately going to solve? That is, as we talked about today, in your heart of hearts, your passion. So, one of the reasons I believe that we're heading on this epic path towards abundance, and I want to share it with you because it's been refined in my mind a little bit. You're going to hear all of this summer about all the exponential technologies riding on the fifth paradigm of computational exponential growth, right? Or the fifth paradigm of computational systems. Read about it all in Ray's books. And that's growing at an exponential speed. And on top of this, anything that becomes digitized, synthetic biology, medicine, AI, robotics, all of these things also grow at exponential speeds. And in fact, it's this technology which gave us the last 100 years of epic progress of humanity. Right? If anybody doesn't believe we've had an epic 100 years of progress, we can have that conversation over wine later. But let's just assume for a moment the last 100 years has been extraordinary. The fact of the matter is what made the last 100 years extraordinary was the doubling of human lifespan, the tripling of per capita income, the reduction of food, energy, transportation, all those things. It has been technology, and technology isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. What people don't talk about, though, that's on top of that, which makes me even that more excited, is that true innovation is really the exchange of ideas between people. I have an idea, and I share it with you, and then you build on it and share it back with me. And that's always happened is people have gone from rural areas into urban areas. And that's increasing more and more. But what's happening on top of that, which is extraordinary, is that we're going from, 2 billion people connected on the internet to 5 billion by the end of this decade. Eric Schmidt, Executive Chairman of Google, was just talking about, a month ago, cryptically, having 7 billion people connected, and then Google X, announces their Loon project of, the stratospheric layer of internet service, if you would. So now we have 7 billion people connected in the internet. But it doesn't stop there, of course, right? Because what's now happening is those 7 billion people, the majority of which have been in poverty, now have what? They've got access to extraordinary health, right? We're going to democratize, demonetize healthcare, where people, you've heard me speak about the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize. We're going to have literacy. We're going to have now 7 billion people who are healthy, 7 billion people who are literate, and now 7 billion people who also have access to cloud computing, 3D printing. So what's the world look like when that level of existence? Not, 100 years or 50 years, not 20 years from now. 20 years from now. What happens when 7 billion people on the planet, okay, it's not 7 billion, maybe it's only 4 billion, but it's definitely 3 billion more than are doing that right now. What happens when billions of new minds are coming online, healthy and literate, with access to, food, water, energy, and now the ability to say, yeah, I don't need your help, I'm going to solve this myself. That, my friends, for me, is the compounding, convergent change that's coming online. Right? We don't just have the exponential tech, which has always been available just to a few smart graduates and entrepreneurs and government agencies. That's been the case, where we used to depend upon entrepreneurs and governments to use this technology to solve problems. But now what happens when billions of people take on responsibility for solving their own problems? Now it starts getting, sort of exponential to exponential power. Now it starts becoming very interesting. So I do believe that we're heading we've been in a world of haves and have-nots. David, you showed us those images which have been true. But I think where we're heading, and I'm not saying that the divide between the rich and poor is going to disappear. It's not. It is widening in many different ways. But what is happening, and this struck me the other day, is we're going from a world of have and have-nots to a world of have and super-have. Right? It's not a world of luxury for everybody, but a world where people have a world of possibility, where their basic needs are being met, where people have health, literacy, energy, water, food, and they're not sort of scraping and scrapping trying to survive, which is the way most people are today. But a world where they have that basics, and now the choice of what they do with their lives becomes interesting. And that's the world that we have a chance to create. In a world for me that is one that I think we're morally obligated to create. And then, along the way, you should also become a billionaire. Right? You heard me say today, the world's biggest problems, the world's biggest market opportunities. Help the lives of a billion people is the quickest way to create huge wealth. And now the question is, what do you do with them? Right? Because unlike the giving pledge that Gates and Buffett speak about, I think what we need to have is an impact pledge. It's not a matter of